Hi, everybody. Welcome. It's Natha Perkins from Electra Astrology. A huge thank you to everybody that came to my live workshop this past weekend. It was a success, and I've opened the doors to my Astro-Cohort. If you'd like more information on that, we're going to gather for 6 months, and we're going to go through astrology, what's happening currently. We're looking at your chart in a really personalized way to get a sense of where you've come from and what is still holding you back and what you need to do to transform. We're bringing in spiritual practices. We're learning how to read astrology. It's really quite a beautiful piece of work that we're going to be doing together. And this is the first Astro cohort that I've put together like this, and it's going to be something quite extraordinary. So I invite you to check that out at electraastrology.com. We begin February 2nd. In the meantime, we are going to talk today about the transition between the sign of Capricorn and Aquarius. The body of these talks are coming from my podcast episodes that I put together in 2024. I moved through I moved through a lot of the facets of every single sun sign, and I'm editing them and re-releasing them on YouTube so that they're all in a single place so that you guys can find them really easily, because these teachings are a combination of spiritual practice, astrology, and a deep dive into your own psychology. So they're really helpful for what we're doing right now on the planet. So the first few months of these episodes are podcast style. So once I'm done talking, we'll go into a video. Before we begin, I want to talk a little bit about the fact that each of these signs are flanked on either side by another sign. And there is this overlap that happens where it's not just Capricorn, it's Capricorn mixed with Aquarius, for example. Last month, if you missed all of the Sagittarius talks, I did one where we talked about the mix of Sagittarius and Capricorn. And it's important to understand these because a lot of us look at astrology like I'm just a Capricorn or I'm just an Aquarius. But the truth is that there is so much nuance, and there's always this overlap that happens where we're actually blending both of the energies together, and it's creating a completely separate energy. Let's talk about that. So, of course, with both Capricorn and Aquarius, there's something special happening because the planet Saturn is the ruler of both of these signs. Now, the modern ruler of Aquarius is, of course, Uranus. We'll be talking a lot about Uranus over the next several weeks. The traditional ruler is Saturn. So what does that look like if Saturn is the ruler of Capricorn, which is all about the governing forces? It's about learning how to show up with integrity and learning how to govern oneself, but first having to start by being governed and understanding what it feels like. Sometimes when we're governed, the people that are taking care of us are doing a really amazing job. It can feel like, I'm great. Why would I want to have to take responsibility for my own stuff? Because this government is taking care of my needs. However, I think that we don't have that experience very often. What usually happens is that we realize that we don't like the rules. We don't like how the government is doing it. And, ultimately, as we all age, we want to take responsibility for our own experience and we want to make our own rules. But in doing that, we have to really figure out, what are my morals? What are my ethics? And what are my values? And how am I going to show up in my life consistently, modeling those things that are important to me? And so that's what we're doing with Capricorn. So Saturn, as a ruler of Capricorn, teaches us all about, really the hard lessons, what happens when you make a mistake and what happens when you are not in integrity with yourself, or what happens when you have to break away from the existing government and start to do your own thing. And that's when we move into the energy of Aquarius. Aquarius is not so much about following the rules and learning about your own moral compass. Aquarius is where you've been there and done that, and now you know that something needs to be different, something needs to change, and rules need to be updated. Morals and values and ethics tend to evolve as we get older and we begin to get more clear in our values. the planet Saturn is actually exalted in the sign of Libra, which is Venus ruled, and Venus is all about our values. And what usually happens as we get older is that we stop putting so much value on the things that we buy, on our popularity, or our romanticizing of love. And we begin to see that really what's of most importance is that we have good relationships. And so when we look at Aquarius, we are looking around and saying, what needs to be better here? Like, I followed the rules and I've made responsible choices, and I've made some mistakes along the way and messed some things up, but I'm coming to a place where I'm now needing to revitalize my stance, or I want to revisit where I've been and look at what has worked really well and what has not, and breathe some fresh new air into it. So Aquarius is also where we have to look around at everybody around us too. And we say, are these rules, are these regulations working for everybody? Because what we have seen, especially recently in the last 5 years or so, since 2020, is that a lot of the rules and regulations are put forth by a single group, and they benefit some, but not all. And there are many different versions in the collective. We're going to talk about this all through Aquarius season, where not everybody wants to follow the same rules. Not everybody has the same values or morals. When we start diving into things like religion, belief systems, cultures, we're all very different. And it's very hard to homogenize a rule into something that's going to work for everybody. And so in Aquarius, that's where we have to start looking at the nuance of, does this work for all? And frankly, we're not going to find something that works for all the time. But what we start to do in this sign is that we start to see with a little bit more subjectivity what the rules and regulations are doing. And on a more personal level, we're looking around and saying, if I'm pushing myself to work really hard to achieve my old version of success, which means making X amount of dollars a year, is that actually healthy for my nervous system? Is my family benefiting? If I'm at work all the time, am I getting the close connection with the people that I love? So this is where we start to go in and look around and renegotiate the things that have become solid structures in our life. And we may find that some renegotiation is required. All right, let's jump into the teaching. So this week, we are going to be talking about the transition from Capricorn into Aquarius. We have spent quite a lot of time over the last few weeks diving into the archetype of Capricorn, looking at the gifts, the ability to get things done, to show up, to act in integrity with our own morals and our own values, that inner critic that can drive us sometimes into those Capricorn gifts. Not always ideal, but that inner critic plays a large role for a lot of us, instigating our fear, instigating our pessimism, pushing us into responsibility through this fear of getting in trouble. So we've also talked about Capricorn and its sister sign, or its other half, Cancer, and how that is an axis where with Cancer, we are home. We are nurturing and spending time with our emotional selves. We are working with our family. We are working on a sense of safety, in comparison to that Capricorn having to go out into the world to make a name for yourself, to make money, to generate the resources that you need in order to take care of the family. And then we also talked about that transition from the Sagittarian energy into the Capricorn energy, which is being out in the world, exploring, finding new beliefs, new exciting ways to look at the world, and how you have to eventually take that home and use it to build a foundation based on what you now have a deeper meaning about the truths in your life. So this week, we are going to transition between Capricorn and Aquarius. So you can see how all of these signs, one gives way into the other. They all go together. They all represent different facets of our human psychology. So we can use astrology as an organizing principle for the human psyche, as well as a guidepost for our spiritual awakening, and also as a way to more deeply understand others and how others work. So, speaking of understanding others, the sign of Aquarius is a relationship sign. It is fixed air. Aquarius is a relational sign. All of the air signs are. With Gemini, it's much more personal because it's how we actually communicate. It's how we interface with the world and how we gather information, how our brain works, etc., how we meet people that are right here in our sphere that we're dealing with every day. With Libra, we are looking at our intimate partnerships, the way that we relate to people who we know really well, people that we love. And then Aquarius is about how we relate to people in general, how we relate to society and the collective. So we will go through many different facets of this archetype over the next few weeks, but I want to start by looking at how Capricorn gives way into Aquarius, because Capricorn, with a ruling planet of Saturn, is about mastering something. It's about going out into the world and doing the hard work that it takes to know your stuff. Saturn rules Aquarius as well in traditional astrology. The modern day ruler of Aquarius is Uranus, but we always have to take into account the traditional rulerships of these signs, especially as I'm talking about the transition between Capricorn and Aquarius, because that Saturn energy has a hand in both signs. Now, what we know about Saturn is that it likes success. It is largely driven by fear, first of all, the fear that there's not going to be success. And we know that we don't like fear, but a healthy amount of fear can keep us on track. It can keep us riding in the right direction. And sometimes, if we're good at it, we can really use that fear to progress. And that is something that Aquarius is all about. It's progressive energy. So we look at what we're trying to master, or even what we have mastered already in the sign of Capricorn. What are the traditions that we follow? What are the rules that we take to be the law? Then we move into Aquarius, where we know that we have to improve. So whatever you're trying to master right now, we are moving into this period of time of a month and longer, where now we have to get in there and improve our work. We have to do better. So Saturn is teaching us how to do something. And Saturn has also taught us a great bit about resilience, how to just keep showing up even when we've made mistakes, and how to use those mistakes to our advantage. Saturn has also taught us about a negativity bias and how we tend to feel like this has worked before, therefore I have to do it this way again, or this has not worked before, therefore it will never work in the future. So what we are learning to do with Saturn is to use our fears as stepping stones instead of stumbling blocks. And then we move into Aquarius and we say, I've learned a lot about staying the course. And I have learned a lot about meeting my stumbling blocks head on. And I don't want to stay here because I feel stagnant. And Aquarius is where we are asked to tap into our inner genius. A lot of what we want to look at, because Aquarius is a relational sign, to look at our impact on the world. What is this thing that we are trying to master? And what is the impact of that on our community, on the people around us? Is it serving not just me, but them as well? We have to ask these questions because we are not operating in a vacuum. And one thing that we dive into strongly in Aquarius season is, what is our impact on the world? Are we operating from a place of selfishness where we aren't taking anybody into account? Or are we operating from a place where we are taking everybody into account and it's to our detriment? We're trying to learn in Aquarius season how to improve what we're doing, with the caveat that improving what we're doing has to benefit both us and everybody else in some way. It's not that you're going out and making more money so that you can pay everybody more money, but are you creating a bunch of collateral damage in the wake of your making money? we'll dive into this more as we go through the next few weeks. We can't always help everybody all the time. We are all autonomous and we are all responsible for our own situations in one way or another. We don't have complete rule over anything. And that is the nature of Capricorn. We make rules to fit what we think is best. And then Aquarius says we have to tweak those rules. So this isn't necessarily about going in and changing everything up, but it is about small considerations for other people, for your effect on other people. Because what we know is that the more that we are interacting with the collective, with our community in ways that are positive, the more positive we end up feeling. We become less fear-driven because Capricorn is such a capitalistic, me for myself kind of energy. I put in the hard work, I make more money, I spend more money. And we understand that that can generate a lot of fear in and of itself. What if I run out of money? What if I can't do the work? And we go into Aquarius where we look around and say, what if I put in my hard work and somebody else puts in their hard work? Then we have double the resources. And in a similar way, what if I'm doing my best to make a positive impact on the world and other people are doing their best to make a positive impact on the world? Then our efforts are magnified. So what I want to leave you with is this idea that Uranus does bring the need for change. Uranus will activate things inside of you and help you to see facets of your life that need innovation, that need to be up-leveled in order for growth and transformation to occur. And that's really what we are all looking for. If you're listening to this podcast, growth and transformation is probably a big part of what you're trying to do right now. And in order to have growth and transformation through the lens of Aquarius, we have to liberate ourselves from something, whether it's from our own personal fear, from our own desire to follow the rules line by line, even if those rules aren't necessarily good rules. And so we are looking around right now, and you can do this week until next week. Look around your life and say, what do I need some freedom from? What are the traditions, the regulations, that inner critic activity, that capitalistic drive that's wearing me out? What do I need to liberate myself from, if even just a tiny bit? And in that liberation, how can I do something that would have a positive impact on others? So those are the questions that I'm going to leave you with this week. Remember, the more self-aware you are, the better off the rest of the world is. And that's really our journey and our mission right now. All right, I hope you have a great week.